Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 300. Glorious Return. Part 1. The exclusive skill, Fourth Wall, is strongly activated. The fourth wall moved the moment secretive plotter stared at me. The fourth wall growled like a beast protecting its cubs. Be careful, Kim Dok-ja. The first time I came here, secretive plotter called the fourth wall the last wall. There was no information about it in the original, but that didn't mean I had no idea at all. It was because there were various types of walls and ways of survival, including Jang Han's unidentified wall. I came to receive the compensation, secretive plotter. I opened my mouth, but secretive plotter didn't reply. Sparks were flying around secretive plotter. The darkness covering his expression looked angry as he asked me, Demon King of Salvation, why did you make that choice? Huh? I didn't know what he meant by his sudden question. Secretive plotter asked again, why didn't you want to go back to the third round? That world wasn't your round. This world saved my life. That's it. If you left it, they could find rest. That isn't rest. Secretive plotter, why did you send me to that parallel world? The sparks around secretive plotter intensified. It seemed like his existence was becoming unstable. Secretive plotter sighed and said, everything was already decided, you don't know what you changed. The white hole in the place where there should be eyes was watching me. I will give you the reward I promised. I nodded. There were 3 rewards promised for this sub-scenario. An item, skill, and story that was acquired in the 1863rd round. What item will you take? This coat. I was a bit tense as I pulled out the white coat that Han Soo-young gave me. Secretive plotter's eyes leaked out light and narrowed. It seemed I couldn't deceive the outer god. Secretive plotter had promised me 1 item. However, the coat's inner pockets contained more than 1 item. That's fine. Since 1 less flower is returning, the total sum of probability must be similar to the flower. The infinite dimension space coat has been received as a reward item. Fortunately, secretive plotter overlooked Han Soo-young's coat. Next was the story. You will naturally be taking that story? That's right. In the first place, the only story I got in the 1863rd round was the one that Yu Jong-hyuk gave to me. Obtaining this story meant I needed to modify some of my planned routes, but it didn't matter. The important thing was to see the end of the story that I chose. You have acquired a new story. This story will be applied normally after returning to the original world line. Last was the skill. What will you do about the skill? You didn't acquire any new skills. I wasn't able to receive a skill, but is it possible to receive this type of compensation? I started explaining to secretive plotter. After a while, secretive plotter nodded. It is possible. You have acquired the reward skill. This skill will be applied normally after returning to the original world line. I obtained everything I needed to get. The unexpected happened when I was going to ask the secretive plotter to return me to my original world. There were strong sparks as someone tried to penetrate this space from the rear. I noticed the status that could be felt beyond this space. It seemed that the Bureau had noticed secretive plotter in this place. In other words, the person trying to break into this space was likely to be a great Dakibi of the Bureau. You'll be going now, Demon King of Salvation. Secretive plotter moved his fingertips lightly and a portal appeared under my feet. I hurriedly called out to secretive plotter. Wait a minute. How many years will have passed when I return to the world? Secretive plotter glanced at me. Some stories are read quickly and some are read slowly. I tried to open my mouth, but my lower body had already passed through the portal. Demon King of Salvation. Do you think the story of your disappearance will be read quickly or slowly? I could hear a mischievous laugh coming from somewhere. The portal was fully activated and my field of view was completely blocked. Once we meet again, I hope that you are the proper master of the wall. Was it because it wasn't my first time crossing the world line? I was able to maintain my consciousness despite being swept through the portal. The fourth wall is strongly activated. The Viceroy's dimensional door has set the time-space coordinates. The scene of the flowing star stream. I thought of the things I needed and the memories that floated up like buoys. The Viceroy's dimensional door is closed. I woke up at the message and was lying on the ground. It was a spacious place, dimly illuminated by lanterns hanging from the ceiling. There seemed to be voices in the distance. Where was I? It didn't seem to be Earth. Why? Why did I suddenly come here? The star stream has detected your presence in the world. The star stream has reconfirmed your modifier. The star stream will assign you to the scope of your constellation. The Bureau is calculating your status. I thought I knew what was going on. I left the scenario of the original world through the Outer World Covenant. A price was necessary to return to the original scenario. I felt the muscles of my body jerking as the messages continued to rise. The Bureau has completed your examination. Returning you to the original scenario isn't suitable. The Bureau will review scenarios for your level. The review has been completed. I sighed as I watched the messages that came up. I expected this to happen. No, actually, I intended it. I left my original world and went to another world. The categories were different, but all beings who came back to the original scenario like me were called by the same name. You have acquired a new story. You have acquired a new attribute. You have obtained the qualification of a returnee. A new scenario is being prepared for you. I had become a returnee. I slowly raised my body and saw several men and women talking around me. They were all returnees like me. Ha ha ha, I can finally return to Earth. It has been 10 years. I have been waiting 20 years. Where have you been? Based on the colors, was it Murim? I'm from Gratis. Have you heard of it? Then someone waved at me. Oh, you must be the last one. It was a man dressed in black shaman clothing. He was wearing a mask, but his eyes, and the impression he gave off, were somewhat familiar. I briefly greeted him and the man spoke again. Brother, where are you from? Earth. No, that isn't the question. There is no one here who isn't from Earth. I'm asking about the planet you moved from. The man smiled wryly. At this moment, I thought I knew the identity of the man. A towering person who looks like he has a bag of tricks. Eyes that are suitable for night vision and only half the eyebrows are left, as if eaten by crows. I couldn't help smiling. It was already time for this person to appear. The place I went to was also Earth. The Earth of a parallel dimension. HRMM, is that so? You are a very unusual person. The man extended his hand towards me. I will introduce myself first. My name is Wang Weirong. In the second Murim that I went to, I was called Flying Fox. Flying Fox, Wang Weirong. He was one of Yu Jongyuk's later colleagues. My name is Kim Dokja. Also known as, the Demon King of Salvation. A few returnees listening to the story from the side laughed. Demon King of Salvation? Kuhahahat. It is a great title. It looks like you went to some third-rate fantasy world. A hand hit me on the back. More of them were returnees from Murim or a medieval world. Flying Fox said with a grin. Nice nickname. It's nothing. By the way, you have already been given the returnee's clothing. Ah, yes. I looked down at the infinite dimension space coat I was wearing. I forgot it was originally a garment only for returnees, just like the disaster of questions who I once faced. Maybe that guy was summoned to Earth after going through the same procedure. Just then, Dakibis appeared in the air and started giving coats to the returnees. Several returnees looked between the coats they received in mind and protested. Hey Dakibi! The one he is wearing looks much better. It was natural. It didn't make sense if a coat received from the 95th scenario was worse than the supply coat. Some of the Dakibis were shocked when they saw me and reported to their superiors. By now, Baihyang should know I was back. I wanted to see the people of Earth as soon as possible. How many years had passed? Everybody had to be doing well. Flying Fox received the coat and said with a smile, nice clothes. What will you do when you get back? I'm going to look for somebody. Ho, do you have a lover waiting? I smiled at him. Flying Fox kept speaking. I think I will live in a grand style once I go back. I have obtained a long-awaited strength. I don't need to be intimidated by bullies anymore. Now is the beginning of happiness. The days won't be that happy. Earth would have changed a lot. You are already talking weakly. I have been through all that suffering. What can happen when I get back to Earth? All returnees, please pay attention. The turmoil subsided and the intermediate Dakibi in charge of the returnees opened his mouth as the representative. You will soon return to Earth. You will be assigned a returnee-only scenario and will perform that scenario in your hometown. It is a simple play and I would appreciate it if you enjoyed it. A returnee scenario? Tell us properly. Please check the scenario window for details. Please note that this is a group scenario, so there is a leader. Please remember that the one with the most prominent status will be automatically elected as leader. I will naturally be the leader. That friend from Murim looks pretty strong. I wondered who would be the king of this group. The return to Earth has begun. Together with the dazzling light, the 10 returnees started to move through the space at once. My vision briefly blackened, and when I opened my eyes again, we were in the middle of a vast city. A damaged sidewalk covered with dust. The skyline where the reconstruction of buildings had begun. It was unmistakably Earth. Where is this? Those characters, South Korea. It is South Korea. A returnee from the Korean peninsula jumped forward. I checked the information related to the returnee scenario and shouted, "Wait a minute." Everyone calmed down and gathered together. The returnees were already out of control. Some hasty returnees grabbed the people passing by and asked, "Where is this? What year is it now?" I sighed. The returnee trigger has been activated. They asked for the date. They are returnees. Aok. Returnees. Run away. Report to the Alliance. The whole street was rattled by the word returnee. The people fled like the tide and the returnees made puzzled expressions. What? What did I do wrong? A new main scenario has arrived. Main scenario number 45, Glorious Return, has started. The reflections on the glass building could be seen. Sparks flew as my appearance changed. It was the terrible appearance of a dirty monster with tentacles. The real me wasn't like this, but outwardly, I looked like a smaller outer god. I probably looked like this to everyone on Earth. To the people of Earth, all returnees were disasters. The incarnations of Earth stepped closer with cold eyes. I turned around to see the confused Flying Fox open his trembling lips. "Be brother. What is this? I told you nothing joyful would be waiting for us." The summoning of the 163rd Returnees Group has been completed. You're the king of the 163rd Returnees Group. Chapter 301. Glorious Return. Part 2. It was a tranquil dream. Smoke spread in the field of view. It was definitely South Korea, but there were unfamiliar structures and story weapons I had never seen, while the sky was dark like the world was about to collapse. Han Soo-young in the dream muttered, "What is this?" However, her voice didn't come out at all. There were two people fighting in front of her. A man in a black coat and a white coat. She had seen this before, but something was different. The two men had the same face. Yoo Jong-hyuk? There was a sound, and the two Yoo Jong-hyuk in front of her were gone. What was this situation? What the hell was this sight? In a place not far away, she saw Kim Dokja. Kim Dokja knelt down like a man who lost everything. The moment Han Soo-young reached out her hand, somebody called from right beside her. "It is up to here." She looked over and there was a Han Soo-young with the same face as herself. A chill went down her spine. The cold feeling caused Han Soo-young to wake up from her dream. Han Soo-young woke up with a light man and realized she was lying on the couch. Another dream, damn it. It was a dream that had been repeating since a few days ago. Yoo Jong-hyuk and Yoo Jong-hyuk fought each other while another one of her and Kim Dokja watched. At first, she thought it was a visionary dream. However, no matter how much she tried to interpret it, she couldn't get a sense of the dream. News was coming from the distant television. The launch of the new Incarnation Alliance is causing a change to the situation on the Korean peninsula. Han Soo-young listened blankly while rolling around the cold ice in her mouth. Huh? Ice? What is this? Ajumma, did you put it in my mouth? Why would I do that? Lee Suk-young received the water without even looking back. Han Soo-young frowned as she broke the ice. Then it had to be Yusanga. How long did I sleep? 2 hours. Yusanga? She is drinking coffee in the break room. What break room? Is this place a company? She said this, but in fact, the building they were residing in was an abandoned company building. Han Soo-young grumbled and headed to the break room. Hey, what are you doing? There was a small paper cup on the table in the break room. Yusanga was moving her white fingers through the air. The information that emerged from the hologram was leaking into Yusanga's retinas. The startled Han Soo-young shouted, "Are you crazy? Are you using that stigma again? You can score goals at a really young age. I don't know what will happen if you spam such a powerful stigma." The stigma used by Yusanga was the Hermes system of Olympus. It was Olympus's big data network that gained information from all over the star stream to measure the future. It can't be helped. The worst situation has to be avoided. Don't I know information about the future? It isn't enough. There are too many variables. The stigma Hermes stigma dramatically shortens the user's lifespan. Han Soo-young was aware of this fact, but she was unable to dissuade Yusanga because Yusanga played a large credit in the group members reaching the 45th scenario. If it wasn't for Yusanga measuring future scenarios, the party members would have experienced a major crisis in the 35th scenario and 40th scenario. Han Soo-young bit her lips. This girl. It had been 3 years since Kim Dokja disappeared. It had already been a long time since the hope of him coming back had started to dim. Steam rose from the cup of coffee. Yusanga stared at it and opened her mouth. Sitting here reminds me of my days working at the company. At the time, I always hid in the break room. I never worked in a company, so I don't know. You definitely aren't a company person. Yusanga smiled and Han Soo-young licked her lips. You were in the same company as Kim Dokja? Yes. Were the two of you close? Yusanga stared at Han Soo-young, who had tried to sound casual. Yusanga smiled and replied. Even then, we were comrades. Disaster alert. Disaster alert. There were loud notifications, and Han Soo-young rushed to the office. Lee Suk-young, who had been on standby, checked the warning area through the television. Another? Where is it this time? Busan. Busan? That isn't too far. The kids will handle it. Han Soo-young replied curtly while looking at the news flash on the screen. Tentacled monsters appeared on the screen and engaged with incarnations. Lee Suk-young sighed and asked, Soo-young, are you keeping in touch with the other kids? Why keep in contact with the kids who don't like me? Rather, what is emerging on the bowl, Ajumma? Lee Suk-young looked down at her star relic. Han Soo-young asked, what have you seen this time? Lee Suk-young didn't answer. Han Soo-young raised her head as she smelt something strange, and Lee Suk-young stood like a stiff statue. Thus, Han Soo-young realized something. Kim Dokja had disappeared for 3 years. In the first place, there was only one thing that Lee Suk-young had been checking. Han Soo-young stared at the bowl for a long time before declaring, I'm going to take a quick trip to Busan. By the way, there is Yoo Jong-hyuk now? I looked at the scenario window that popped up in the air. Plus. Main scenario number 45 Glorious Return, category, Main. Difficulty? Clear conditions. After a long journey, you have finally returned home. Let people in your hometown know about your presence and leave a mark that you are back in one of the main base areas. The people of your hometown will welcome you. Time limit, none. Compensation, 200,000 coins, the removal of the disaster transformation. Failure, death. Asterisk. While the scenario is in progress, the incarnations will recognize returnees as creatures. Asterisk. While the scenario is in progress, the incarnations can't understand the language of the returnees. Plus, the clear conditions were screwed up, but cursing didn't make people feel better. Your goal is Uedo, Seoul. There is currently no markable base area nearby. I took a deep breath. Yes, maybe this was better. If I had to carry out the 45th scenario anyway, it might be a good thing that I was a returnee. This scenario was practice for some places that would be opened in the future. Shit. Why are they attacking? The returnees attacked by incarnations were angry. Not all the surviving incarnations were strong. There were still some incarnations without sponsors and others who later joined the scenario. Therefore, the attacks of the incarnations weren't threatening to the returnees. I can't stand it. Hey friends, just wipe out the whole area. It isn't possible. The returnees' expressions hardened at my words. Why? They attacked first. What is the good reason? What is the reason? Shit, look at their faces. They want to catch and kill us right away. It certainly seemed that way. I was confused on how to explain this situation. The Dakibis disapprove of your presence. Originally, the 45th scenario was a full-scale deployment of returnees and existing incarnations. Since my group number was 163, there must be 162 groups summoned all over the world. The First Returnees War. In the original novel, the third-round Korean peninsula was devastated by this war. In other words, it would flow like the original if this kept happening. What? The disasters are talking together? Kill them quickly. The Black Flames demon ruler said so. It is easy to kill them when they are off guard. No, didn't you hear about the Moonlight Empress? There are disasters that can communicate, so be careful. I heard some familiar nicknames. In any case, the strong incarnations of the Korean peninsula were still alive, allowing these incarnations to be carefree. Then a returnee waiting for my words seized my collar. I will kill you if you disturb me. Get lost. What if I don't want to? The returnee aimed his status at me, and I grabbed the returnee's wrist. The constellation Demon King of Salvation is opening his status. There was the sound of bones breaking, and the face of the returnee I grabbed started to turn blue. Who are you? The frightened returnee's legs weakened. The temporary channel has opened. The constellations of the Korean peninsula are paying attention to you. The constellation Bald General of Justice has entered the channel. The constellation Maritime War God feels a sense of déjà vu from you. They were welcome modifiers, but now wasn't the time for greetings. I told the returnees, shut up and put away all weapons. Then gather by my side. I will blow away your brains if you are late, so move quickly. I deliberately spoke in a radical manner. Those who realized the difference in my true voice gathered around me. By the way, it wasn't only the returnees who were confused. Crazy! What is that monster? Report it quickly. Report to the Alliance. The incarnations that felt my status were running away. I thought this had worked out better. Flying Fox asked, "Be brother. Are you the leader of our group?" I nodded, and the returnees exclaimed, "Oh my God, we have a constellation among us." There were 10 returnees gathered around me. There were 5 from a medieval planet and 3 from Murim. The remaining 2 were from other areas. I gazed at their faces one by one and started talking. I don't know where you came from or your purpose for coming back. The nervous returnees were looking at me. There is one certain thing. If this scenario fails, we will all die. Some of the returnees belatedly opened the scenario window. You can't meet your loved ones or acquaintances, nor can you step on your hometown. We will be remembered as disasters to the people of Earth. The returnees who argued with me, and the returnees who were deeply shocked. They seemed to be coming to their senses, one by one. Some returnees saw themselves in the glass of the broken buildings. The reason they attacked us. It isn't just our appearance. There were returnees who were summoned before us. Some returnees came back because they missed their homes, while others came back to destroy their homes. They threatened Earth's well-being, and perhaps it was currently happening in other places. I declared with confidence, you shouldn't fight. It will only cause ruin. Why don't we tell them that we don't intend to fight? It is doubtful if they will believe it, and it is also hard to communicate our words. Our words won't be properly conveyed to them until the end of the scenario. The returnees' expressions darkened. Do you have any plans? Avoid combat as much as possible. Make it a top priority to leave a mark on a base. Once we clear this scenario, we can escape from being disasters. Fortunately, I was able to communicate with this group. There was Flying Fox, so if I was lucky, I would be able to complete the scenario without much conflict. However, things didn't work out so easily, just as in all scenarios. Alliance. The Busan Alliance. Along with the shouts, people approached through the crowd of incarnations that split apart. At this moment, I heard the distant sound of boats in my ears. There was a faint saltiness in the breeze from Houndy. The fourth wall is shimmering faintly. 12 boats appeared on the sandy beach of Houndy. 2 people leapt from the front boat. The Admiral has come. The Insect King. I once again realized that a lot of time has passed. Some things had changed, and some hadn't changed. The girl with the cap on her head was still wearing her distinctive hoodie, but she no longer wore a uniform skirt. The boy with the insect net still had his distinctive, fierce eyes, but his features were more pronounced and he was taller. At the very least, he couldn't stick to my thighs anymore. Kid, do you want to do it or should I? We will decide by tossing a coin. I missed them. I really missed them. I wanted to say this. The pure white sand sparkled and I knew I had to run away, but I couldn't move my feet. The constellation Demon King of Salvation is looking at his companions. Maybe I had hope. The others were different, but they would definitely recognize me. Perhaps I wanted to believe that. The scenario penalty has distorted the indirect message. The next moment, an indirect message emerged in the air. The ugly squid is provoking the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. Lee Jai-hai stared at me. Kid, I will kill that squid. Chapter 302. Glorious Return. Part 3. Lee Jai-hai was holding the Duke of Loyalty and Warfare's sword in her hand. It wasn't the double dragon swords that Lee Jai-hai of the 1863rd round had, but the performance was excellent. Maybe she took it from a museum somewhere. Where's the squid? She asked the baffled returnees. Jai-hai. Stop. It's me. I shouted desperately, but my mouth didn't open. On Lee Jai-hai's side, it looked like I was screaming and waving my tentacles. Ugh, disgusting squid. Die. Lee Jai-hai's blade flashed as she ran towards me. This was vaguely similar to the 1863rd round. Lee Jai-hai's blade narrowly grazed the top of my head. My hair was severed and Lee Gilliang called out. Do a good job, Nuna. Cut the big tentacles instead of the small ones. Shut up. Somehow my hair looked like tentacles to the other side. They didn't know it was me, but I couldn't help feeling sad. I warned the returnees, who were retreating nervously. Everyone, don't attack. I'll take care of it. Fortunately, it was comforting that the returnees listened to me. Flying Fox's confused voice was heard. I'll help you anytime. Flying Fox was a returnee who was pretty outstanding in the second Murim. If an unavoidable situation happened, then I could borrow his help. How could I let Lee Jai-hai know of my existence? Cut the squid. In this scenario, my spoken language wasn't conveyed to Lee Jai-hai. However, originally human communication wasn't just through spoken language. What? Don't move strangely. I activated Way of the Wind and started writing on the ground. Lines were drawn on the ground as I avoided Lee Jai-hai's sword. The returnees behind me noticed my intentions and let out exclamations. In fact, I didn't know if this would work or not. The original novel didn't cover these types of communication possibilities in detail. The question was, would Lee Jai-hai notice my intentions? What? Is it writing on the ground? Fortunately, Lee Gil-young was quick to notice and understood my intentions first. Lee Jai-hai paused and looked down at the ground. There was a note left by my dazzling footsteps. The handwriting was bad, but it wasn't illegible. I am Kim Dokja. This was the sentence that I wrote. By the way, the scenario penalty has distorted your writing. The penalty was applied to this? The fourth wall read the distorted sentence on behalf of Lee Jai-hai. I am a good-look ing squid. The character, Lee Jai-hai, has used demon-slaying LV-10. Lee Jai-hai's eyes turned red as she started to accelerate towards me. She was much faster than before, and this made it hard for me to dodge. I tried to wave my coat in a sign of surrender, but all my efforts were in vain due to the scenario penalty. The ugly squid is provoking the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. Die. I had a slight headache. If these hallucinations continued, my message would never be delivered over there. It would be best just to suppress them. However, I didn't want to do that. Maybe something had changed in me after the 1863rd round. At that time, something popped up in the head of the good-looking squid. Wait. If this was the case... I thought for a moment before deciding to do it. No matter how the scenario distorted my language, it couldn't distort it this much. The constellation Demon King of Salvation has sponsored 91 coins to the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. Something that couldn't be distorted. The scenario penalty has distorted the indirect message. The ugly squid has sponsored 91 coins to the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. It was precisely the coin number. Lee Jai-hai frowned at the sudden donation from the squid. What? Come on Jai-hai, please. The ugly squid has sponsored 91 coins to the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. Do you think I won't attack you if you give me this? The ugly squid has sponsored 91 coins to the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. Don't be so annoying. I dislike coins that aren't in units of 100. Really? Then what about this? The ugly squid has sponsored 9,158 coins to the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. For the first time, Lee Jai-hai's attack stopped. She didn't understand anything. It was just because the amount of sponsored coins had increased. Lee Gil-young asked, "Why did you suddenly stop, Nuna?" "No, it keeps giving me coins." "Coins?" The surprised Lee Gil-young glanced at me. "Is it a constellation? What constellation will have a modifier, like the ugly squid?" There was one. No, not me. It wasn't a squid, but there was someone with a similar modifier. Now my modifier had changed. Damn, why was I explaining this? Lee Jai-hai hesitated as she stared at me with uncertain eyes. Why does it keep giving 91 coins? 91 coins? Yes. Then he gave me 9,185 coins at the end. 9,185 coins is quite a lot. Is it a hidden scenario? Or maybe something meaningful? I thought this was my only opportunity. The ugly squid has sponsored 7,942 coins to the incarnation, Lee Jai-hai. Lee Gil-young looked shocked at my coins baptism. 7,942? Perhaps? The children's eyes were shaking. I watched the clear eyes and was deeply moved. Yes, that's it, children. It's me. Kim Dokja. The constellation Maritime War God doubts your identity. Some constellations on the Korean peninsula are curious about your identity. Then an unexpected constellation entered the channel. The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy has entered the channel. The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy has noticed your identity. God of Wine and Ecstasy, Dionysus. Speaking of which, it was Dionysus who told me about this 7942. I thought things might work out better than I expected. If it was this constellation, he might decipher the message I sent to the children. The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy claimed the number 91 to be a type of numerical play. My heart was pounding. Dionysus' guess was right. The number, which was read as 91, was my code to the children. 9, Gu, 1, 1. Guan, salvation. Fortunately, Dionysus seemed to understand what I was saying. Now Dionysus just needed to tell them that I was the demon king of salvation. The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy says the squid must be an intelligent squid. I looked up at the sky. Li Gilyoung cried out happily. It is a hidden piece. Will it give coins every time a tentacle is cut? The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy is nodding. Once the scenario was over, I would smash Olympus. Li Jihai cried out, I will catch it. Hey Gilyoung, you take half. The tentacle that Li Jihai ran along was my arm. It's really nimble. Nuna, cut that big tentacle there first. That was my leg. I'm annoyed. I'll just cut it from the middle. That couldn't happen. The moment I was about to liberate my status, there was a dragon's roar. The force caused the returnees to momentarily flinch. I looked up at the sky and saw the black dragon covering it. There was a nostalgic face. Like Li Jihai and Li Gilyoung, this child had grown a lot. You're always late, Xing Yusung. Don't rush around on your own. Only the plump cheeks proved that this girl was the child I remembered. Xing Yusung on the chimera dragon landed on the ground. Xing Yusung glanced to this side and asked Li Jihai, you haven't finished it yet? I told you not to take too long. I'm trying, but it is a strange disaster. Strange? That squid over there. Xing Yusung stared at me. It keeps giving me coins. I feel bad, Xing Yusung kept watching me. The constellation Demon King of Salvation is looking at his incarnation. I slowly went up to her. Shit. Don't approach suddenly. Despite Li Jihai's threat, I kept moving forward. I couldn't help moving forward. The Beast Master has come. Okay, we can kill them now. The emergence of Xing Yusung caused the incarnations who fled to the periphery of the shore to ran back across the white sands. There were the sounds of weapons colliding all over the place. The courageous incarnations were aiming blades towards me and the returnees. In fact, a real hidden piece was concealed in the 45th scenario. If our group could clear the scenario without having a single victim. Flying Fox shouted as he was pushed back with the returnees. Brother! We can't hold out long. I don't know what you're trying to do, but do it quickly. Human beings were people who didn't even trust fellow humans. Then how could they be friends with a disaster? Die-tentacled monsters. A race that tried to dominate what was similar to them while excluding what was different from them. My appearance was reflected in their eyes. I was just a tentacled monster to them. Maybe there is another way. Yu Zhonghyuk in the original novel took this returnee route several times. However, Yu Zhonghyuk had never once accomplished this hidden piece. To be precise, he couldn't accomplish it. Even if it is a bit hard, if I had been able to find another way. Everyone who took the returnee path walked the road of regret. Thus, I knew his failure. All the ways I could fail were the roads he had already walked. Now Yu Zhonghyuk left for a road that didn't exist in the original. It was a world where the possibility of countless failures was open again. The fourth wall is shimmering faintly. Thus, I couldn't lose either. The constellation Maritime War God is looking at you closely. The constellation Bald General of Justice is looking at you closely. The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy is looking at you carefully. What are you doing all of a sudden? Jai-hai Nuna, be careful. Lee Jai-hai's blade flew towards me as I moved forward. I didn't avoid it this time. Blood from my unprotected skin flowed onto my coat. She didn't know I wouldn't avoid it, and the startled Lee Jai-hai's eyes widened. The other incarnations rushed through the gap towards me. In a moment, my surroundings were filled with the weapons of the incarnations. The number of tears on my coat started to increase. I took some attacks, blocked some attacks, and kept moving forward. There was a girl at the end of the road. The child who was my first incarnation. There was Xing Yusung, who was supposed to be a disaster, like me. The child was watching me. I went through the road and approached the child. One step, another step. I walked at a steady pace to not frighten the child. I didn't care if my blood was splattered or my flesh was torn. I didn't release any status to raise her vigilance or take out a weapon to pose a threat. The child's face was right in front of my nose. If the destruction hadn't happened, she would be at an age to enter middle school. The child grew up this way, but I had been away from her for too long. A sharp sensation pierced my chest and I dropped my head. The ugly squid is looking at the incarnation, Xin Yusung. I suddenly felt funny. Maybe I was better off as an ugly squid. The words of secretive plotter crossed my mind. What if the ending they wanted was to die with you there? Do you still want to save them? It isn't salvation. It is a curse. I was arrogant. My longing was just my longing. There was no guarantee that my feelings would be shared by my party members. The Kim Dokja they remembered was just a selfish constellation. Forcing a goal at will, forcing them to live and forcing wounds on them. I was a colleague who wasn't around when they needed me most. Then why is this child crying? Lee Jai-hai and Lee Gil-young lowered their weapons and the incarnation stopped attacking. As everyone stared at us, I knelt slowly towards my incarnation. It might be because I wanted to show respect to my child who grew up brilliantly alone, or to seek forgiveness for all the times I wasn't there. I'm back, Yusung. My words wouldn't be delivered. Your incarnation is looking at you. My incarnation slowly stretched out her hand and laid her little hand on my head.